something that I say along the way will touch you. I know it. Let's begin that process of crafting a meaningful life.
Here's Mary Crafts.
You're listening to Crafting a Meaningful Life, and I'd like to welcome you back to my podcast again. I'm Mary Crafts, and it's always a wonderful experience to come to you every single week and share with you what I'm learning, share with you the learning and the wisdom and the knowledge of other people who are either my friends or who I've met in contact or have just simply been referred to me. And I bring those things to you because they have been of value to me, and I want and hope that they're of value to you. My guest this morning has been a friend of mine for, 18, 19 years. And in those 18, 19 years, we took the same journey, okay, but in different paths and roundabout and took off in different directions. And now to find here we are together again, certainly walking a different path still, as we all do, but headed in the same direction. Even though we're taking different paths to get there, the goal of happiness and health and healing are kind of what we're about. I want to introduce you to my guest today, Amanda Loveland. Welcome, Amanda.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. Hi, Mary.
Oh, so don't you feel like that we both were in this completely different world when we met? I mean, close to 20 years ago, and yet then our lives just what happened to us? What?
All beautiful things, all challenging things and beautiful things. And I feel like that was 10, 20 lifetimes ago.
Yeah.
That version of me is so old.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful.
So,
I'm grateful for that version.
Amanda and I, we met at the United Way here in Utah County. I had helped launch the Women in Philanthropy. Your mom was just a stalwart at Women in Philanthropy. And one day she brought her girls along.
Yeah.
And you were one of them. And immediately I just thought, wow, this woman not only is gracious and loving, but beautiful. And even then, Amanda, you had this sense of wisdom about you. So I think that that's an eternal thing in you. You've just discovered it now in a different modality.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a seeker of truth and always striving to become a better human. I think as we all are, especially like you talked about, you and I both are going towards that same direction. And I think a lot of it's that self-development of really honing, really self-mastery.
Yeah, that's really what it is. I know even at my age, you're significantly younger than I am. I'm much closer to your mom's age. But that is what the quest is. Each day I think about that. What is it going to come to me? What's going to happen in my life that's going to lead me to even more healing, to greater understanding than where I was yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about your journey, what you felt really launched you into a change of direction in your life, an awareness that there was something else calling you.
Well, that is such an open-ended question, right?
Yes.
It's like which path do I want to take as far as explaining that? And I'll do a little bit of the shorter version. As you kind of spoke a little bit, I feel like I've always had that innate sense of wanting to know more, wanting to understand what else is possible in this life. And growing up in Utah County, I grew up Mormon and in a beautiful family dynamic, but it had its challenges. And I kind of would bump against the systems. And it's been 11 years ago now, I divorced my first husband and then also left Mormonism at the same time, which was not planned. It was something that, because I was strengthening that inner voice and inner knowing within me and kind of asking what else is possible, I was teaching gospel doctrine, which if you don't know Mormonism to the audience, it's like a Sunday school type class. And I went to go bear my testimony. And as I went to go bear my testimony, nothing was there. All I could bear it was in love and light. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. And I just had this innate knowing I was done and there was something more. It was almost like I graduated, which is a really interesting thing to have happen. And at that time in my life, I went through a lot of changes, and a lot of us did in 2012. 2012 was like a really catalyst year for a lot of people. And it kind of propelled me. At the time, I was running a clothing business called ModBod, which was very Christian based. And here I am going through all these shifts and these changes. And as I was doing that, I was asking the universe, my God had died. So I remember one day just looking out my window, and I had always been so connected to nature, and it lost its beauty because God had been connected in it for me. And so my foundation just completely was shattered, which is a really challenging place to be in, but also a really beautiful place, because then it starts, we do get to ask those questions of now what's next? What else? And I had kind of put out a call to the universe of I want to know what else is out there. What other kind of connection do I get to have, because this old one has died. And
Amazing.
and yeah, I said to the universe, I will walk through any door that presents itself, but I get the choice. Once I walk through that door and I kind of see what's there, I can choose to come back out and then close that door. And I had hired a salesperson, and I had taken her to lunch, and we were chatting, and she shares with me that she's a shaman, which at the time I had never heard of. And she said, I'm actually co-facilitating the medicine wheel in Sandpoint, Idaho. You should come. And I'm like, oh crap. I just said I would walk through any door. And I walked through that door, and it was a year-long journey. And I had done several things at that time. I had dove into Wicca, oddly, and I dove into Reiki and all sorts of things. And this was the most transformative personal work I had ever done. I watched, when I did my deep, deep healing, I watched my outer world shift over and over again without me having to engage with those individuals. It was just the relationship I had with me changing. And then my outer world reflected it. And that really was like my shift in becoming more self-aware, self-reliant, and coming more home with the wisdom keeper that I am. And it really propelled me on the journey that I am now, where I am a shamanic practitioner and an NLP practitioner. And I feel that my purpose here on this earth is to bring people back home to their original soul's blueprint. And it's not just from this lifetime, but their origination of their soul. And that is what I feel like my purpose is now. So it's so interesting to go from being a business owner and all these things to now I'm over here doing all sorts of different things. And it's just because it was a soul call. And so I've definitely been soul led. When I get those answers, I listen and I move.
I I hadn't realized, Amanda, until this very moment how parallel in the universe our lives were. I didn't know that
Mm,
until, I mean, I knew we were both shifting. I knew we were going different directions. But 4 years before you, obviously, I divorced my first husband
yeah.
and left Mormonism.
Mm,
Was a gospel doctrine teacher at the same time, had been that for 10 years. And for those of you who don't know that, it is kind of the epitome calling in the Mormon church. If you know a lot and have deep belief and you understand the scriptures and can quote them and all sorts of things, you get to be that. And like you, I came to a point where I no longer could bear the truth testimony that this church had the only way.
yeah.
And I knew deep inside that it didn't.
Hmm.
And while there are many beautiful teachings within the Mormon church, it was not a place for me anymore. And so
Hmm.
as I left that, I don't know if you just immediately came out and announced to the world, hi, I've left the church. And so all of my friends who are 90% Mormon, you can either like me or not like me, you know. But it's a process
It is
of
a
coming
process.
out of hiding
Hmm.
and being able to say, I am still the same person. I'm
Hmm.
growing in different directions now. But to learn to accept yourself regardless of what happens in that other circle of friends. I just had to finally move forward.
Yeah, and I would actually argue a little bit that I'm not the same person. I think at the core of us that we always are, but I think one of the things, I have a podcast around leaving religion, and I've written a book around leaving a religion, and I've worked with a lot of clients around this topic. And actually on my mastermind call yesterday, this had come up again with, especially with religious dynamics, when we choose out of that construct and then we go back into same family systems, we have changed. And a lot of times that can be from like a big transition like we're talking about, but it can even be after going to a retreat and having these life-changing moments and then trying to go back into your world. You have
Right.
changed.
You
And so
definitely.
expecting these people to then embrace you in the changed version is a little bit of an unfair expectation, because we've shifted and then we're expecting other people to show up and mirror that, partly for validation of, okay, I'm still lovable, I'm still okay.
Hmm.
And it's like, no, we get to have grace and love for those in our circles of, I recognize that I am changing, that I am not the same person. And I'm okay with that. And getting more in that right relationship with self and allowing time and sometimes space for other members of your circle to kind of get on the same page.
Right.
And some of them won't get on the same page, and then they naturally step out of our lives, and that's beautiful too. Even though it's painful, sometimes that's one of the best things for us.
Yeah. And people that, like we always talk about the value of circle and those people that are closest to us. And those people that really matter in the purpose and mission of my life still are with me. And then a
Mm.
whole crowd of new people are there as well, which is the
Yeah.
beautiful part of that. But I think that it's interesting that the things that I loved about you previously are still the same things I love about you now. So when I say you
Hmm.
haven't changed, we both have definitely changed.
Right.
But there's just more to me now than there was
Yeah.
before in trying to stay inside of a box. I still have some of the things that were inside. I've always been a loving person. I've always been about
Yeah.
service. Those still things in that box. But I think you can relate when I say this. I'm no longer about living obedience out of shame or
Hmm.
sin. I'm now about living the way that I feel is the most embodiment of me out
Hmm.
of purpose and vision.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So, as you kind of look through this journey that you've been on and to where you are now, what do you think are some of the greatest aha moments where you said, that's a piece of light I'm going to keep for me?
Mm. The biggest aha moments. Most of my biggest aha moments have been in some of my deepest challenges, right? We grow the most usually when we're going through struggle,
Yeah,
when we're going through change. And um, I think often we hear, I don't, you've heard the phrase, I'm sure, the dark night of the soul, right?
right.
When we hit our rock bottom, and then like I was kind of sharing, then it's like, okay, what else is possible? And then we kind of let go of what we've known so that we can allow for things to come in. And I feel like that is something that I've continued to try and take in my life, especially um as I have, I'm like, I'm trying to feel how to share this story. In shamanism, we carry what's called a mesa, and
Okay,
we
so
have
for
these.
for those listeners of mine that, because I do have a lot of Mormon listeners,
Yeah.
let's start with sharing your definition of a shaman so they can be on the same page with that.
Yeah. Shamans have been around since the dawn of time. They are the medicine men and women that have been a part of our planet, and they're very deeply connected to the earth and actually to all realms. So, in a typical, traditional description of a shaman, they're map makers. We can travel in between the worlds and kind of
Mm.
go in and out. And actually, when we talk about in between the worlds, ironically, I guess not ironically, we can go into the subconscious and the superconscious. And so when I'm working with a client, it's always fascinating to see what's rooted in the superconscious and the subconscious. And a lot of times, I'm sure as you're aware, Mary, most of our motivating things that are kind of behind that we're not aware of come from the subconscious. A lot of limiting beliefs, limiting emotions are usually what's driving us. And so that's really where a lot of my awareness has come from, of, okay, what's hanging out back there that I can go clear and release so that I can become more and more of my best self. And my biggest ahas have been coming more into my medicine, if you will, if so to speak. And one of those had happened with being a shaman. I went through years of training, and in shamanism you get different shamanism is an oral tradition. And so with our stones that we get passed down, my lineage came from the other lineage, the Caros in Peru. And I had my medicine stone that was my lineage stones. I actually had two of them. And like any of us, when we do our personal work, especially when it's seated in something sacred, I was asked once with my connection with spirit showed me to go give my lineage stones to the river. And it was like this huge, like, oh, my heart was like, wait a minute, what? Like, this is a part of like a lot of time and energy and deep, deep medicine that I felt like I carried. But I had cultivated enough of myself, my relationship with spirit, with source, to listen. So I drove up the canyon, I sat by the river, and I had two lineage stones, and I sat with them and I tracked the energy. And what that means is I held the stone and I could track the energy that was behind the stone, and I was tracking it up. And what I was shown is that because it was an oral tradition and because we're human, that there was a lot of muddiness that had come down through the lineage. And when I was shown that, it's like, okay, I'm okay to give this. So I gave it to the river, and then spirit said, grab another stone and claim your own medicine, claim your own lineage. And so I did. And we use a lot of the breath and energy in different things. So I blew this energy into the stone and I called in my own medicine, my own lineage. And the reason why that was such a huge aha moment is I feel like in life, we usually rely on others as far as teachers to really help us develop more and more of our skills with any modality, with any religion, with any construct. And it's a really beautiful thing because it provides structure in our life. I use the analogy a lot of it's the banks to our river. You know, we do need the structure so that we can have the flow. If there's no structure and the river, there's no banks to the river and the river is just going everywhere, everything would be flooded and it would be a mess. So when we create these, learning of how we're cultivating our life, yes, it creates this structure, but at some point we get to let go of what we think we have known to really start calling in what our medicine is, what our wisdom is, that's innate to us.
I want you to repeat that part. To start letting go of that thought is, I think, so profound. I want people to hear it again.
Well, and I do think in order to do that, it does take a lot of self-development to a place where you have self-love. Self-love and self-trust come hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. So we do get to learn things to a point to where we feel like we've cultivated enough trust and enough love with ourselves that then we can let go of what we think we have known to really start asking the innate questions of, and what's my truth? What's my medicine? What's my wisdom that I get to embody on this planet at this time? Mm-hmm. And it's a beautiful...
I love that process of letting go. Yeah. Of what we thought we knew.
Right.
Yeah. Hard and fast. But they weren't just the things that we knew. Sometimes people think about, like, for example, for us, perhaps it was religion was one of the things. But they are also things like the things I thought I knew from my childhood, that I was never good enough. That was a truth I carried with me from my childhood and generationally, which I've discovered. But I can go back and question those truths that I thought were truths. So it's not just about physical things in our world today, but it's things that we brought with us to this world. And wait a minute, they say that we're all perfect, we should love each other, but I love myself and I don't. And so to be able to release that and go back and say, what was that about? And where did that basis come from? Why does it seem like it's always been with me? That it wasn't a learned behavior. It was like always with me. Is the universe trying to tell me that I really, no matter how much I try, I'm never going to measure up? Those are things we can still let go of in this life at this time. With the two things I always say, Amanda, the way I end my book, which was, and that's another thing. We both started a podcast. We both wrote a book.
I love it.
But at the end of my book, I say, it's never too late. And that nothing is impossible. And that we get to go let go of those things we thought we knew to discover what is. I love that, Amanda.
Yeah, one of my favorite books and one of my all-time favorite authors is Florence Scovel Shinn. I brought that book
You
to
did.
our little group. And one of her sayings is what else is possible? And when we do that, that saying is a really beautiful question to ask of what else is possible, because it gives this room and this breath of, instead of limiting ourselves, it's like, what else is possible? What else is possible today? And what else is possible in my life, especially when things are challenging? It's a really beautiful question to ask, because our thoughts create our reality. And when you speak to that unworthy piece, like a lot of us, most of us actually carry limiting beliefs that we're unlovable, that we're unworthy. I mean, all sorts of things. And it's
Yeah.
usually formed between the ages of 0 and 9, are most
Yeah.
of our beliefs and views of the world and how
It's
we
like
see it. And
98% of it.
yep, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? And we're kids, and so we're seeing through this limited view of the world, and it's really a fascinating thing. But what's really beautiful is there's so many tools and modalities out there that you can our healing does not have to be as traumatic as the original wound. And that's one of the most beautiful truths to
Yeah.
hold, is like, oh, I can actually go back to that thing that happened to me, find what the gifts were, what my learning was in that, and then it can release. It can be as simple and as easy
Yeah.
as that. So it's no longer driving my life.
One of the things that I've been experiencing lately, Amanda, and as a shaman, perhaps you can speak to this. I mean, I've been on this healing journey now for 19 years, and um, 15 years since I divorced my husband. But what I am becoming more and more aware of, how that is, it's not done. And there's things that I am now remembering that I hadn't remembered my entire life. And I'm like, once again, coming to them and thinking, oh, yeah, remember that happened?
Mm.
And this happened? And like, how did all those things come about? And what was the first thing? And I'm trying to ask myself these questions at this age in life, when I just should be sitting back and playing golf and having tea. I'm finding out. I'm remembering all these things.
Yeah.
And not when I'm in a journey, when I'm just waking up in the morning, or when I'm, you know, sitting even in front of the TV, something will come to me. I'll be like,
Mm.
do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And then I get to choose at that moment a choice. Do I want to put it back down where it was
Yeah.
hidden? Or is it okay? And can I trust enough to bring it out?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that happening to me now?
Mm. First of all, I feel your heart so big, Mary. Like I feel that tenderness with even sharing that. Um, and what's fascinating and really quite beautiful about our healing journey, I know you've heard this saying, that it comes in layers, like it's peeling back the onion. And sometimes we revisit the same thing over and over again and we get really frustrated. But I feel like it's actually quite kind that we would be able to go through the layers one at a time. Because when we do that, if I were to peel back to where I'm at now versus where I was 10 years ago, I would have freaked out compared to
Ah,
where I'm at now versus then, right? It's like going in these layers has created a safety within me to be able to then open up to see other things. And what I'm saying with you, Mary, it's the same. You've created safety within yourself of healing and peeling back some of these other layers, that now these other memories are surfacing to be able to hold in a different place. You probably are able to hold it with more love and
yeah,
grace, regardless of what it is, than you would have 5, 10 years ago.
absolutely.
And I feel like there's several reasons why, but that is, in my experience, that's one of the biggest reasons, is the safety piece. When we feel like we have more safety within the self, then it allows for these other things to open more and more. If you take a child, for example, a child's not going to share something traumatic that had happened if they don't feel safe. And nobody would.
Right?
And safety is our number one reason for our motivations to do anything. It is actually quite a fascinating thing when you start diving into that. But that's what I would say to you, Mary, is it's a safety piece.
Mm,
You become more safe and more comfortable with yourself, that it feels like, okay, now I'm ready to see this thing. Okay, now I'm ready to see this thing. And I would imagine you're able to move out of it a lot quicker now.
yeah. as I think about this, in my book, I have a whole chapter on this. It's on vulnerability, and
Mm.
my favorite quote in that is, "Isn't it great when you can start quoting yourself?" But is when I say, "The healing starts when the hiding stops."
Mhm.
And now that this is making more sense to me now. Now that I'm like in the healing mode, I have created more safety within me and more
Mhm.
trust. And you know my partner, John, and I've always said there isn't anything I wouldn't share with him. And I
Mhm.
think that's why this came up in me, these memories, because I thought, oh, this might be something I don't ever want to share with John. So I'll just keep it kind of right here. But what would happen if I shared it?
Mhm.
You have to ask yourself that, not only sharing it and becoming aware here, but what is out here?
Mhm.
And I've now come to know that there isn't anything I could share with John or myself that I still wouldn't be okay.
Mhm.
I think you're exactly right. It's that feeling of safety.
Mhm.
And I don't know if
Well,
I've
and
ever
that's when
had that.
yeah, when we start showing up for ourselves in ways that we never did, we start moving through the hard places and knowing we always come out on the other side okay. Then we
Yeah.
start developing that inner trust, even on the subconscious level of we show up for ourselves, we know we can depend on ourselves. So it creates this deep sense of safety. And, there's a love that comes with that too, especially when we allow ourselves to be seen. It is from a
Yeah.
place of I know that I'm okay. And I'm okay if you don't accept this part of me, but it feels to share it, so I'm going to share it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful quality that all of us strive to hold and to have.
I think it's one of the things that I admired most about you just the other day.
Mm.
So I'm going to paint the picture for those who are listening. We went to a mastermind event with 90% men and also probably 90% in the Mormon religion. Uh, but we just show up as ourselves. We're welcome, we're loved. And the premise of the meeting was we were to bring a book that we wanted to share with others. And then we broke into small groups, and there were about 8 people. Well, actually, we started only with 6 in our group, but people kept wanting to join our group.
I
What
know,
was
it's
with that?
cute.
I'll tell you, we just had that energy, right?
Yes, we did.
People were just like, "What's happening over there?" So anyway, and we each introduced ourselves and our books. And Amanda, you have stepped so into your power and claimed your identity. There was not a moment's hesitation on your part as you were sitting in that small group just to step forward and say, I mean, like some people say, I'm a marketing director. I'm I'm a videographer. I mean, all these different things, and you step in it
Mhm.
and you freely say, I'm a shaman. And I thought
Mhm.
to myself, oh, I'm so proud of her. I admire
Mhm.
that. I admire her willingness to just to stand in your space, in your own power, and just be who you were. And I wondered, does everyone here know what that is? Should I explain for people? But you are
I'm
just,
okay if they don't.
yeah,
They'll go Google if
yeah,
they don't
yeah.
know.
But I just
Or they'll laugh.
so admired you, and you're just to, I think there's no other way to say it. When I see you and when I encounter you, when I see you on social media, the one thing that you radiate to me is that have you stand in your own power.
Mhm.
And not that that means I'm a powerful badass. That's not what I'm talking about here. Your own power of knowing exactly who you are.
Mhm. It
Thank
is
you.
one of the things I do love about myself. And what we do for the one, we do for the all. And so as
Right.
I step, because one of the things I think, especially as women, we think that if we stand more in our authenticity and our power of who we are, that it takes away from someone else, or we need to take from someone else. And that's simply not truth. And it is one of those things that the more we continue to stand up in that, we do give permission for others to do the same. And it's never I hope, I hope that I never ever hold the energy of I'm better than. you need to listen to me. It's more of a,
Oh
hey, these are the
yeah.
things that I've learned, and come with me and let me show you what I've learned, and then let's see what you get to go do with this, because you're a freaking badass. Go do the things you're here to do. And yeah, it was an interesting space to be in. And one of the things too that you mentioned that a lot of your listeners are Mormon, and I have deep love for the Mormon Church. And when
Absolutely.
I was called to do both my book and my podcast, was in a meditation and received this inspiration to do this it was called Leaving Religion and Those We Leave Behind. And it was to be done with no animosity, no hate, no attacking. And the way that I left the Mormon religion was none of that. And so I really had to check in with, okay, can I do that? And it took me about 2 years to actually go,
Ah,
okay, maybe I'm okay to do this, because most of my family is still in the Mormon church. And what I've really appreciated and what I've really loved is none of what I've written, none of my podcasts are attacking. I mean, everybody has as I've interviewed guests, they've had different pains, different hurts that they've experienced. But it's really just about, hey, how can we support each other? And this works for you, beautiful. Keep doing that thing. And then when it doesn't work and people are feeling lost and their hearts are hurting because they feel so alone after
yeah.
they've stepped out of a community that has been so much a part of their life, now what? Now where do they go? And that, the more that we can do that for each other, of just supporting each other in whatever truth looks like for all of us, we'd be better off as a community and as a society, of just keep going. Mary, Amanda, whoever it is, oh, that's what you find is beautiful and truth
Yeah.
for you, and you're happy. Oh, I celebrate you. Keep going.
Yeah. That's also one of the things that I refuse to engage in. And if I find myself in a group or in a conversation where they want to badmouth another religion, whether it's Mormon or whatever it is, that's not a space for me. I'm not feeling anger. I don't resent. I'm not upset. I am just like every piece of our life, Amanda, that we know those struggles are our gifts. That piece of my life was also a gift. I was a
Mm-hmm.
freshman in college. I had 3 suicide attempts.
Hmm.
I was lost. I just didn't know. And I was going to every single religion I could possibly find. I had just started investigating the Muslim religion because
Mm.
it was the last religion I knew that had a connection with Muhammad to God. And
Yeah.
and so when I stepped into the Mormon religion, it was a savior for me.
Mm.
And because there's so many rules and regulations that it brought me back from a place of near death
Yeah.
to being solid enough that I could start the journey of finding my own truth. So I have
Yeah.
no anger or resentment.
Mm-hmm.
But and whether or not someone is in that place or not, I don't want to judge them that way. Just
Mm-hmm.
like I try. Let me just say I try not to
We
judge
all
people.
do,
I
Mary.
try not to
We're
judge people
human,
of what their political views are.
right?
But sometimes I find myself, but that is, and you know this, Amanda, my biggest mission in life at this point in time is this oneness, bringing about oneness and what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And it all begins with me. If I'm not one with others, if I'm
Yeah.
judging, if I'm critical, if I'm angry, I cannot possibly be one.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's helped me refine my life. And people say, well, this oneness is not even possible. It's possible for me. I
Mm-hmm.
know that within my lifetime, I am going to be able to stop judging people and myself.
Mm-hmm. For me, what that to get closer and closer to that, it's been understanding that everything is a reflection of something within me. So if I can see myself in all things and know that there's somewhere in me that is alive and that is active, and can I still love those parts? It makes it a lot easier to understand the oneness, because we are connected to all things. In shamanism, there's a saying called being an Aini, and that's what shamans usually strive for. And
Ah,
Aini is right relationship with self. And there's these really beautiful stories there's several different stories, but one of them is that there was a village at the top of these mountains that depended on their crops for survival, and they were going through a drought. And so they called in a shaman to come into the village. And as she comes in the village, she asks for a hut to stay in. And she goes in this hut for 3 days. And as she comes out on the third day, the rains come. And they praised her. What did you do? And she said, your village was so out of Aini. It took me 3 days to get back into Aini, a right relationship with myself inside this village. And once I did that, it radiated out and brought balance into the village. And I love those illustrations, whether these stories are true or not. I love the illustration that what we do for the one, we do for the all. And there are stories after stories. And when you dive into quantum mechanics and quantum physics and all sorts of things, we do understand that what we do here, it does affect everything around us. And so when we start projecting out our crap onto other people as being a victim of whatever had happened to us, instead of, okay, what is it in me that I get to take ownership of how this was created? And how can I be more self-reliant and have more self-confidence? It's not self-confidence. What's the word? Being empowered.
Mm-hmm.
Then we really do walk through the world in such a beautiful way. And that is what I hope that we all strive for, right? It's like,
Yeah.
how can we be more at peace within ourselves so that we can be at peace with the world, regardless of what's happening?
And that is such the journey, because one cannot say how much they love people until what? Until they love self.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found my heart space to be able to love me, which has been, the lotus blossom unfolding constantly. In fact, just recently I unfolded a piece as I was listening to an Oprah podcast, and she talked about learning to love self, all self, from the day she was born. And at that moment I went, wait a minute. I love myself now. But you're saying it's possible for me to go back and love that person that I didn't love? Wait a minute. And as I felt into that, I was like, oh, this is so painful. Yeah. But to be able to embrace myself and envision myself as you first met me. And that person so caught up in shame and weight and just being out of alignment within my body and my soul, and to embrace me and to thank myself. Thank you for going through so much. Yeah. Thank you for struggling. Thank you for keep moving. Thank you for finding the way. And then that self-love. And so now what's happened since then, Amanda, this is kind of a crazy thing. So just bear with me on this. But I have found I can actually envision my heart. And I can actually feel it doing this to others. Now that I have healed here. Mm-hmm. And so if I know, okay, this is really bizarre, but if I know I'm going to walk into a place that I've not been before, or people have not been before, I don't want to walk in with anything other than just love. And I want to have confidence. So I'm rehearsing this, but I literally think before I open the door, just to feel into them and see their hearts as well. I can feel this physically. My heart just opening. That's something I've never felt before. Those are things that I'm still in the process of learning.
Mm-hmm. How beautiful does that feel, Mary?
Incredible. I have
probably no words.
Such trust in myself too.
Yeah.
That's why I have I still have fear, but I recognize it now and I go, wait, I know you. You're fear. Come here. Let me hug you.
I know, right? One of my favorite quotes is fear is excitement without the breath. And I use that a lot of I'm afraid of this thing. Okay, it's going to get me to this next thing that I want. Great, let's go.
Okay, say that again. That's such a great quote. I love that.
I know.
So
fear is excitement without the breath. And I can't remember the guy. It's a man that did that quote, and I don't remember his name, but I can find it.
Fear is the excitement without the breath.
I think it's Fritz Perl.
Ah, okay. Because we all think about when we're fearful, the breath is like shallow, just
Yep.
tense, tight, our whole body. But if you can see it, oh, I'm afraid of that. Jumping.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I can't, every time I've done a retreat, every time I've done a speaking event, every time I've done anything that pushes me a little bit, I almost cancel. I almost bail every time about a week before. Because you're like, screw this. I don't want to do this thing. It
Right.
scares me too much.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, oh, and then I still do it because I know my patterns. I know what's happening. And then on the other side, I'm like, that was the most amazing thing that ever happened. And it, and it is, right?
People wouldn't believe that about you and I or anybody who's on stage or in front of people because we seem so confident, so ready. But just before I go up on stage, I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing? Why did I put myself through this? Why?
Right.
I mean, no one's got a gun to my head and said I have to do this. Just go home. And then all of a sudden you're just like, they announce your name, you get on stage, bang, you're off there.
And you're like, oh, that was amazing.
Yeah. Crazy, huh? All right, Amanda, as we wind down, I want you to think to all the women and a few of those brave men that are listening.
Yeah.
What is the gift you'd like to leave with them?
The gift that I say often is to remember that you're not alone. That often in our suffering and our sorrow and our deepest, as we're talking about our self-healing journey and those parts of us that we're so scared to share, that you'd be surprised when you start to open your mouth and you start to feel those places where you do feel safe to share it, how much you're not alone. And I would encourage anybody who is feeling alone to open up to the universe, to God, whatever your connection is, of who can I share this with? What circles can I step into where I know that I'm not alone in this journey? And can I call in my angels, my guides? Because they are always around you. And just because they're unseen, they are there. Without
Yeah,
question, they are
without
there.
question.
So that I feel like would be my, I guess, gift suggestion to you, that you're not alone, that we're all in this together. And what you do for the one, you do for the all.
And however different you think you are from me, or how far removed you are from Amanda, the truth is that you're not. That we all are one. Not same, but one. And I love our uniqueness. I love your uniqueness.
Yours will.
Wouldn't that be a horrible world if there was just a world of Mary Crafts and nothing else? I mean, we'd be all looking for the nearest shotgun, seriously.
I don't know about that, but it's like listening to an orchestra where there's only one note playing. It's like, it's boring. Like,
Yeah.
of course we want the
But
myriad and the
beautiful
variety
of
of life.
all of that, yeah, coming together.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we got to come together, Amanda. And just the chance meeting that we had the other day just solidified in me. I'm just going to walk into this podcast and Amanda will share her wisdom and we're good. It's all just perfect in its perfectness, even when it's messy.
Yes. Well, some of the messes, we often get to learn what we don't want and what we're not, so that we know what we do want and who we are.
Yeah.
And that is probably the other little thing I would offer when you are going into those places of, can I still love that version of me however many years ago? Absolutely. She taught you so many things.
So
and
many
one of them
things.
may have been, you know what, I don't like that version of me. I didn't like that. So now I get to know, okay, I want this part. I want to do these things. This is what I want to call in a relationship in life and whatever. Yeah. So I just appreciate you, Mary, for showing up and just being your beautiful, authentic self and just shining wherever you go. It's quite stunning.
Thank you. And the same to you. And thanks for being with us today. And I hope that what you do leave with is that you are not alone. Namaste.
Listen to the full podcast today and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and more. Crafting a Meaningful Life with Mary Crafts.